My niece has an imaginary friend called the Shadow. Recently, I've begun to see it too. When she first started talking about things the Shadow had done, we thought it was amusing creepiness. Normal little kid imaginary friend things, right? I didn't break the cup, the Shadow did it. Or she'd say something that was weird and then say, the Shadow told me to say that. Or that Shadow made me do it. It was little things at first. Coloring on the walls, dropping a cup. No one else saw anything. Only ever my niece Abby. That is, until a few months ago. After my dog Ridge died a couple months ago, I was in a pretty bad state of mind. I had a very special bond with this dog. He was my baby, and I was his. He was the family dog before my parents passed, and one of the last things I had from that time in my life. I don't know if I was just that Ridge's presence stopped the Shadow from showing itself to others, but after he was gone, that's when things truly escalated. The first time I noticed it, I had left my niece in her bedroom to sleep. When I turned to flip the hall light switch off, I saw a movement out of the corner of my eye. I swung my head towards my niece's bedroom door. I could have sworn that I saw something move in the doorway. When I checked, there was nothing there. It was like that for a week or two, seeing something move from the corner of my eye when nothing was there. Then for a few weeks after that, I would see a human-shaped figure pass by doors after I left a room or down the hall, always around my niece. The next change also happened one night when I put my niece to bed. Again, standing before the light switch, I saw a movement. When I turned, it was standing there in the doorway. This tall man-shaped entity. A chill slithered down my spine as it reached out and closed the door. I smacked the hallway light on and barreled down the hallway into my niece's room, yelling for my brother. As I burst into the room, I flipped the light switch to see nothing. My niece was sitting up in her bed, rubbing her eyes groggily, asking me what was wrong. My brother and his wife erupted into the room. I swear, there was a man in here, Jack, I said, peeking behind the door, under the bed in the closet. There's no one here, Tori. Maybe you should get some sleep. I know how tired you are right now. Jack ushered me out of the bedroom. That night had several dreams. A girl fighting to keep control of her body and losing it. A boy running from his own monsters. Another boy fighting the feeling of something not quite right inside himself. I dreamt of my own fall, of the day the Shadow invades my body. It was only a kiss. The dreams were kind of scary for me, but not particularly bad. I've had worse. I predicted my parents' death. Anytime I dream something 3 times, it happens. I dreamt that my parents were going to die in a car accident. I dreamt it 3 times, and I never warned them. I didn't believe in my dreams at that time, even though I had seen these predictions come true many times already. Now I do though. Now I know the power of dreams. Just because I knew what was likely to happen didn't make the situation any less scary for me. After seeing it in the doorway, I began to see it in other doorways. In particular, standing just outside my bedroom door as I drifted to sleep. I wasn't sure exactly when they were going to escalate further or how far they were going to go, but I knew that it was coming. I already know the intended end game. Knowing what's coming, knowing the end game, that didn't make it any easier when I began to see the Shadow up close and personal. The first time I saw it, it was in the kitchen, making breakfast for the family. It was super early, still dark out. My brother and his wife were going to take Abby for family photos to put on the Christmas cards this year. I had volunteered to get up early and feed everybody since I was going to be home alone all day, and have avoided being a part of family photos since Mom and Dad passed. Abby was seated at the table behind me with a glass of milk, giggling and talking to herself. You know, the normal. Just push it off the table, she won't know. The soft whisper was definitely not Abby. It was male and sounded like an adult. A chill ran down my spine, and when I turned from the stove I saw it. This extremely tall, human-shaped thing crouched beside the table. It wore a black robe and had extremely pale skin. Its limbs seemed almost too slender and too long. Its fingers had 2 extra knuckles, and as I watched, it reached out with one hand, took Abby's, cupped it around the glass, and pushed her hand into the glass until it fell to the floor. It chuckled and turned its face toward me. High cheekbones that seemed too far apart for a human of that size, and the chin appeared inhumanely thin and pointy. Before I averted my gaze, I saw its pupils, vertical red slits set within much too wide, entirely black eyes. Its mouth was just a bit too long, lips extremely thin, split in a wide, unhinged smile. I gasped, "Abby!" as I set a plate of pancakes in front of her. My skin crawled with the need to remove this thing's hand from my innocent niece, but I knew that I couldn't let on that I could see it. So I cleaned up the spilt milk and did my best not to look like I wanted to cry about it. "You have to be more careful, kiddo." After I saw it for the first time, I began to see it at least once a day. I'm not sure if I saw it when it let me, or if it was just that moment when it was weakest. I only ever seemed to see more than a shadow in the early hours of the morning or around dusk. None of the other adults reacted to its presence, so I did my best to not draw attention to myself whenever I saw it. It was so hard not to acknowledge it, to scream at it for touching my niece. This went on for weeks. Soon a month had passed, seeing it in my peripheral vision, or standing in a doorway, manipulating Abby's limbs into doing something naughty. Finally, one night I knew that this was the night that it would be making its move. As I lie in bed, I watched it in my bedroom doorway. I listened quietly to the sound of it breathing. "I know you're there," I whispered softly. Its head instantly tilted to the side, further than a normal person would. It glided into the room, slowly closing the door behind it and plunging us into darkness. All but the red eyes, now glowing in the darkness as it approached. "Why are you here? What do you want?" "I think you know, little oracle," it whispered back. "I don't know anything," I replied. In this moment, I was able to hold back my fear of this thing. After all, I knew what came next. It chuckled at my attempt at subterfuge. I felt a gentle fingerclaw tip trace the scars on my left wrist. I jerked at the sudden touch, especially with how close my arm had been to my face. "Oh, but you do, if you just let me in. I can take away all the pain, all of the fear, resentment, guilt. I can make it all go away. You won't ever have to worry about your dreams coming true again." It sighed when I remained silent for a bit. I felt its hand brush over my face, closing my eyes. "Let me make this more pleasant for you." I shoved its hand away from my face and sat up sharply, looking around my fully lit up room. I did not see it here with me, but before I could stand, I felt what could only be the shadow. Its legs slid under my covers, one on either side of me. Its chest tucked against my back, one arm wrapped around my chest, long, slender, normal fingers gently wrapping around my neck. It did not apply any pressure. It merely held me. "Just relax," it whispered. "All you have to do is open yourself to me." It used its other hand to turn my chin up and toward its face. It wore the skin of a handsome man, dark hair, golden brown skin, amazing cheekbones. The eyes, though, it couldn't hide its 2 wide, unnatural eyes. I stiffened further. It closed its eyes and leaned its forehead against mine. "Relax," it breathed against my lips before it kissed me. I remember this. I knew that this was the demon's moment, that if I wanted to be me again, I needed to give in now. So I relaxed. I let it kiss me. I knew it was a dream. I knew it was a demon, but at least it had made this process semi-pleasant and easy for me. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them again, I was in my pitch-black room. staring into those vertical red slit pupils. Today was January 1st, 2007, and my name was Victoria Easton. And if I play my cards right, it will be again one day soon. Losing a family member is never easy, but when your grandma is like your best friend, it's even more difficult. My name is Lisa, and I lost my grandma a couple years ago. I couldn't stomach going to her funeral. I couldn't take seeing her lifeless body as she lay in her casket. I told myself I wanted my last memory of her to be of her smiling and laughing as she enjoyed a glass of wine, not her lifeless body. About 2 years ago, after she passed, I finally built up the courage to finally go visit her at her gravesite. I drove to the cemetery and found her gravestone. I kneeled and broke down in tears. The guilt of not being there for her on the day of her funeral was eating me alive. I felt the cold raindrops as they fell from the sky onto my face, and I felt a hand on my shoulder. I jumped and nearly crapped myself. It was the groundskeeper letting me know that it was time to close the gates. I thanked him and walked to my car. The entire ride home I cried and listened to my grandma's favorite song. Through tears, I swore that I could see my grandma on the side of the road and nearly crashed out of pure shock. I pulled the car over and looked around. I saw nothing. I got home and went straight to bed. I received a call on my cell phone around 1:30 a.m. I ignored the first call, the second call, and I answered the third call. I heard the voice of my grandma saying, "Smile, honey. You'll feel better when you smile." I dropped my phone. My grandma would tell me this after having a terrible day or having guide trouble. I picked up my phone and tried to call the number back, but the caller ID said, "No information." I doubt you believe me, and to be honest, I don't care. I saw what I saw and heard what I heard. I don't know if my grandma was trying to bring me peace or give me a heart attack. This is going to be a shorter story, and it's told from the perspective of my great-grandpa. He and his family lived in a small village in Mexico. Imagine a small western town where everyone worked on their own farm, carried revolvers, and rode on horseback. My grandpa was an alcoholic and experienced many crazy events on his many drunken nights. He was leaving the bar one night and had gotten on his horse. He was halfway home and heard a woman cry out for help. She was standing by the side of the road. My grandpa pulled up next to her and asked if she needed help. She asked in a very shaky voice, "I'm cold. Could I get a ride into the next town?" My grandpa told her to hop onto his horse, and they rode off. My grandpa looked back to look at the woman, but her hood covered her face, and he could only see her eyes. He told us that her eyes made him nervous. My grandpa is a brave and fearless man. To hear he was nervous made us even more scared. He suddenly felt an intense pain on his right shoulder and a cold breeze run down his back. He looked back and saw the woman's face. She had hollowed eyes, and her skin looked like it was peeling. He jumped off the horse and ran for his life. The woman called for him by his first name, "Alfredo, Alfredo." He drunkenly stumbled into a field and heard a baby crying. It wasn't common that someone could be working on their property this late, but nothing is impossible. He looked around and saw a small blanket bundled on the floor. The crying intensified, and he ran up to the baby. He picked up the baby and pulled back the blanket. He saw the face of the same old woman that he had given a ride to on his horse. He dropped the blanket and heard the old woman laughing as he ran away. He stumbled to the floor and looked back to see the woman full on sprinting toward him. He screamed and covered his eyes. He felt cold breeze pass him, and after he opened his eyes, he saw nothing. He ran home and hugged his family. He quit drinking after that event. He didn't know if the alcohol caused this event or a case of wrong place, wrong time.